Lone Pine received him the way small towns receive men who return, with measuring eyes and quiet mouths. Two men paused outside the store with sacks of flour. A woman carrying a water pail went still for a moment. A barefoot boy looked Caleb over as if deciding whether he was a story or a danger. Caleb dismounted, tied his horse, and walked without hurry, as if crossing a hallway lined with portraits of his own mistakes. Mrs. Alden's mercantile had a warped door and a bell that rang with fatigue. Inside, the air held kerosene, dried beans, leather, and old paper. Light came through a narrow window and made the dust visible, as though the room itself had memory. Behind the counter stood a woman with squared shoulders and hair pinned tight. Her eyes belonged to someone who had seen too much and kept little innocence. She knew him before he said a word. "Caleb Rourke," she said, neither surprised nor welcoming. "I imagined you were in Mexico or in hell. Perhaps both." Caleb removed his hat with respect. Shame lived in the gesture, but not theater. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Alden. Don't bring manners like their currency," she said. "What do you want?" The dust in Caleb's throat felt like stone. "I came for my brother, Silas," she said, and his name sounded like a grave marker. "And why now?" Caleb lowered his eyes to the plank floor, scarred by boots that never had time to be gentle. "Because I can't sleep without hearing him," he said. "And because what I did won't let go of me." Mrs. Alden was quiet for a moment. "You didn't do it alone," she said at last. "But you chose the easier road." Caleb accepted the blow. "I know." She closed a drawer as if ending the matter. But she did not end it. "Silas lives west, near the bend of the river, where the ground is meaner and folks speak less. He works for Mr. Haskett's ranch." She paused. "Don't imagine he's been waiting with open arms. He learned to live without waiting." "I don't deserve open arms," Caleb said. "Then why did you come?" Caleb lifted his eyes. "Because I owe him the truth," he said. "And I owe myself a life without running from it." Mrs. Alden studied him. For a moment, something almost human moved behind her sternness, not forgiveness, but the memory that Caleb had once been a young man too. "If you go to him, don't carry speeches," she said. "Out here, words don't straighten what's been bent. And don't expect forgiveness to be a gift. Sometimes it's work. Sometimes it's only a silence that isn't as hard." Caleb put his hat back on. "Where's Haskett's place?" She nodded toward the west. "Follow the road to the old bridge. Turn where the lone pine refuses to die. You'll see the fence." Caleb thanked her. As he stepped back into the street, he felt the stairs like small stones. Not stones that break bone, stones that remind. Lone Pine did not forget, and Caleb was finally done trying to forget too. The brother who stayed, the ride to the ranch carried the steady sameness only the West can offer. Sky, wind, earth, and the repeating sound of hoofbeats. The river, far off, looked more like an idea than water. The bridge creaked like an old memory. The lone pine stood twisted, like a man kept alive by stubbornness alone. When Caleb saw the ranch fence, his chest tightened. Not from fear of a welcome made of iron. Silas was not that kind of man. It was fear of something worse. Being met with nothing at all. Haskett's ranch was a cluster of low buildings, main house, barn, tool shed made to endure weather, not admiration. Smoke rose from a chimney. The place held a working silence, not peace, but thrift. The kind of quiet that saves words so it can spend strength. Caleb dismounted and walked into the yard. A man came out beside the barn carrying a bucket. Tall, broad-shouldered, face burned by sun. Hair that had once been lighter now darkened with dust and time. And eyes Caleb's own eyes, but older in the way they refused to hope. Silas Rourke. For a moment, neither moved. Then Silas set the bucket down carefully, as if unwilling to spill water or control. "I knew this day would come," Silas said, his voice flat and steady. Caleb took off his hat. Silas. Silas took a step forward. Not threatening, just distant in a way feet cannot measure. What do you want? He asked. Caleb had rehearsed 100 sentences across 100 lonely nights. Standing there, none of them felt strong enough. I want to ask your forgiveness, he said. Silas let out a long breath. Forgiveness, he repeated. You rode all this way for a word. Not for a word, Caleb said, for the truth. And to hear whatever you have to say, even if it ruins me. Silas stared at him. A bitter shadow passed over his face. You want to hear it? He said. Then hear it. He nodded toward the open country, as if pointing at a ledger no man could erase. After you left, I buried our father alone. I paid the debts with my hands. I watched the house shrink with every winter. I saw men come through promising work and bringing only exhaustion. And I watched Ma. His voice tightened. I watched her fade, not from sickness, from lack, from abandonment. Caleb's stomach turned. This was not anger dressed up for effect. It was record. I sent money when I could, Caleb said, and hated the defense as soon as it left him. Silas turned his face slightly, as if spitting a dry irony without spitting. Money arrives, he said, but a hand on the shoulder doesn't. A board on the door when the wind starts screaming doesn't. A voice in the night saying, I'm here, doesn't. Caleb swallowed hard. I know. You don't, Silas cut in. You imagine. Imagination is cheap. Silence settled. Somewhere a horse snorted. A crow perched on the fence and watched like a judge. Caleb spoke carefully. I left because I was afraid. Silas gave a short, joyless laugh. Afraid of what? Caleb lifted his eyes. Afraid of being small, he said. Afraid of failing. Afraid of ending up like Pa broken by work and never paid back by life. I thought if I found money somewhere else, I could come home and make it all better. Silas stepped closer. His voice dropped lower, and that made it sharper. And when you didn't come home? The question pressed like a blade without an edge. I didn't come home because I was ashamed, Caleb said. And shame is a prison a man builds inside himself. Silas stood still. Wind passed between them. You came late, he said. I know. Silas looked down at the bucket, as if he needed an object to keep from looking at his brother. I don't know what you expect from me, he said. I'm not a preacher. I'm not a judge. I'm just a tired man who had to become two. Caleb took a small step, careful. I don't expect you to absolve me, he said. I just don't want the last thing between us to be silence and error. Silas was quiet for a long time. We've already had plenty of silence, he said. Caleb heard something in that, a crack, not in anger, but in the wall built to survive. A crack is not a door, but it is how light enters. Haskett and the Law of Work, near sundown, a man appeared on the main house porch. Older, beard trimmed short, eyes that weighed everything like property cattle, land, men. Mr. Haskett. He came down with measured steps and looked Caleb over, as if deciding whether he was useful. Who's this? Haskett asked. My brother, Silas replied without emotion. Haskett raised his brows. And does he know how to work? I do, Caleb said before Silas could answer. Haskett looked at Caleb's hands, his horse, his worn coat. Then you can prove it, he said. No room here for dead weight. He glanced at Silas. If he stays, he earns what he earns. No more, no less. Silas did not welcome him. He did not refuse him. The decision sat in his throat like a stone. Caleb understood then. Forgiveness asked with words was far too easy. If he wanted the right to remain within reach of his brother's life, he would have to earn it in days. I'll sleep in the barn, Caleb said. I don't need comfort. I need a chance to work. Haskett gave a short nod. Before daylight, he said. Fences down on the north pasture, Water needs hauling. Tools need fixing. Caleb nodded. Silas finally spoke, still not looking at him. Stay if you want. Just don't get in the way. It was not welcome, but it was not banishment. And in the West, a man learned to value anything that did not condemn him outright. That night Caleb slept on straw, surrounded by the smell of animals and damp wood. Outside, the wind sang. Inside him, the past sang too. He remembered the night the break began. There had been a cattle drive, an old debt, a man offering an easy job moving stock without questions. Caleb, young and frightened of poverty, had agreed. He told himself it was only a favor, only once. But it was wrong. And when it went wrong, the town whispered. Their father, already worn down, carried the shame like a sack he could not set down. Silas carried anger like a tool he never stopped gripping. And Caleb carried the urge to run. He had never become a romantic outlaw. That was a story for men who never lived the real thing. He had made a crooked choice in a narrow time, when hunger makes the world feel small. But the frontier is not generous with mistakes. Neither is the conscience. Lying awake in the dark, Caleb understood that what he sought was not merely Silas' forgiveness. He sought the chance to become a man who might someday deserve to be called a brother again. Tension that needs no gunfire. Weeks passed. Caleb worked from first light until the sun left. He mended fences, tended stock, hauled water, patched a shed roof. Haskett was hard, but fair in the only way hardness can be fair. He paid little, demanded much, cared nothing for stories. Silas spoke to Caleb rarely, and when he did, it was only instruction. But the silence was changing. It was no longer open hostility. It was caution like a man watching, waiting for the moment Caleb would quit and disappear again. That moment tempted Caleb daily. One afternoon, returning from pasture, they found men on the road well dressed for frontier work, armed in a way that looked more like language than need. One carried a ledger and a leather folder, a paper man. The leader dismounted with the easy calm of someone protected by law and friendship. "Good afternoon," he said. "Deputy Clerk Harlow, county business, tax adjustments and boundary reviews. Mr. Haskett has been notified." Haskett came out with his face set. Silas and Caleb stood nearby, useful shadows. Harlow smiled politely. "Practiced. There's a review," he said. "The county intends to reorganize certain areas. Some properties may require regularization. I pay my taxes," Haskett said. "No one suggested otherwise," Harlow replied. "But there are new fees and certain interests. The railroad has been speaking with gentlemen." Caleb understood the meaning beneath the words. Powerful men were using paper to press tired men off land. The frontier was changing its weapon. Where once there was only threat and distance, now there were stamps, deadlines, and polite ruin. Haskett's jaw tightened. "This isn't talk from my yard," Harlow shrugged. "It's talk wherever the seal says it is." Silas shifted forward, but Haskett stopped him with a hand. Harlow delivered papers and dates and numbers, then rode away, leaving behind a sickness that had no smell. When he was gone, Haskett spoke low. "If these fees are what they claim, I'll have to sell cattle," he said. "Or sell land." His eyes cut toward Caleb. And new hands are not priority when the rope tightens. Caleb understood. In the West, rules were simple. When the rope tightens, you cut what is easiest. Silas looked at Caleb. Something like concern flickered there, quickly hidden. "I told you you shouldn't have come back," Silas muttered. Caleb answered quietly, steady. "I came back because I don't want to be the easiest thing to cut." Caleb's turning choice in town. A man offered Caleb easy money. Not a drunk, not a braggart, a practical sort, sitting low in the shadows of a saloon, speaking like a man ordering supplies. He said there was work that paid well, no violence, he claimed, only hauling goods at night along the river road with no questions. Caleb knew that road. He had walked it before, in spirit if not in footsteps. The old life was always there, like a door a man pretends not to see. The money would help. It would soften the county's pressure. It might buy time for Haskett, and time for Silas, and time for Caleb to prove he was not a burden. But Caleb knew the cost. The West is filled with men who excuse the first wrong as necessity, the second as habit, and the third is something they can no longer undo. After that, there are no excuses, only a self shaped by surrender. That night back at the barn, Caleb found Silas sitting on a low bench, sharpening a tool. Stone against metal made a steady sound, like a clock. Caleb stood a moment, unsure how to begin. Silas spoke without looking up. "If you've got something to say, say it." Caleb drew a breath. "Someone offered me easy money today." The stone stopped. Silas looked up, and the tiredness in his eyes went deep. "And you came to tell me why?" he asked. "So I can stop you?" "No," Caleb said. "I came to tell you I won't take it." Silas went quiet, as if he had heard something he did not expect. Caleb continued, voice low. "I spent years saying I did what I did because I had to," he said. "Maybe I said it so often I almost believed it. But tonight I know this much. I donned to get to buy forgiveness by repeating the same kind of wrong that broke our house." Silas watched him for a long time, then returned to sharpening, slower. "You think that fixes anything?" he asked. "Not cruel, just weary." "I don't know," Caleb said. "But I know if I step back onto that road, nothing will ever change." Silas did not say thank you. Men in that country seldom did, because the words felt fragile. But as Caleb turned away, Silas spoke again. "Pa," he began, then stopped, as if even speaking their father was difficult. "Pa wanted you better than he was. He just didn't know how to teach it when the world was crushing us." Caleb's throat tightened. "I wish I'd understood sooner." Silas gave a small nod. "Sooner is gone," he said. "Only now is here." And that, in its own way, was a form of forgiveness, not absolution, but permission to stand there as something more than a mistake. Storm and a quiet proof. Not long after, a hard storm rolled and whined and cold. Thin rain mixed with grit. A sky pressed low like a lid. Fences gave way. Stock grew restless. The well water turned cloudy. The house creaked under the weather's insistence. Haskett sent them out with ropes and lanterns. Silas and Caleb moved through darkness and mud, guiding cattle toward shelter. The danger was not gunfire. It was nature and animal panicked can crush a man without meaning to, and the ground turns treacherous when a man cannot see it. Caleb slipped once. Pain spoke through his leg. He stood up without complaint and kept moving, not for pride, for duty. A heifer broke away toward a gap in the fence. Silas went first, but the mud tugged at him. Caleb ran around the side, not shouting, not panicking. He approached the animal with low voice and open hands, making himself a wall without making himself a threat. The heifer slowed. Caleb guided it back. Silas watched, and something new settled into his gaze. The recognition that Caleb was not trying to prove courage before men. He was doing the right work when no one would praise it. When the storm finally eased, the ranch was scarred but alive. Haskett looked over the damage with anger held tight. "Tomorrow we repair," he said. "Then we figure the county." Caleb reached into his pocket and drew out a small cloth pouch coin saved from weeks. He held it out to Silas. Silas stared at it. "What's that?" "My wages," Caleb said. "Everything I saved. Use it for the ranch. Use it for the fees. I didn't come here to profit. I came here to mend what I can." Silas did not take it at once. "You'll have nothing left," he said. Caleb answered simply. "I had nothing for years, Silas," he said. "The difference is, now I know why." Silas took the pouch slowly, closing his hand around it as though it held more than money. Then, in a moment too small to become spectacle, Silas set a hand on Caleb's shoulder. Just a touch. But in that country, forgiveness often begins like that. A small gesture that says, without saying, you still belong to me. The truth still unspoken days later, Silas asked Caleb to walk with him to the river. The sky was clear, the wind gentler. The water ran thin but steady. They stood watching the current as if watching time itself. Silas spoke first. Do you know what I hated most about you? Caleb breathed in, ready to accept it. I think I do, he said. Silas shook his head. It wasn't that you left, he said. It was that you left me with a choice. He looked at Caleb. I wanted to go too. I wanted to run from hunger, from shame, from a house falling apart. But I stayed because someone had to stay. And I hated you for making me into what I had to become. Caleb felt that pain like his own, because it was his doing. I didn't mean to trap you, he said. But you did, Silas replied. He fell quiet, then spoke again in a tone that sounded almost like confession. Sometimes I dreamed you came back, he said. In the dream I hit you. Then I woke up tired and went to work. I became a man who doesn't know what he'd do if he stopped working. Caleb stared at his hands. I became a man who slept in different places, so I wouldn't hear Pay's voice, he said. Silas looked at him. You hear him? Caleb nodded. I hear him telling me to come home, he said. I hear him telling me to be a man. I hear him. Dying without me there. Silas closed his eyes briefly. I was there, he said, and sometimes I wished I hadn't been. They stood in silence. It was not hostile. It was shared, two men dividing the same weight. Silas spoke again low. I don't know if I can forgive you the way you want, Caleb answered honestly. I don't know if I deserve it. Silas looked at the river. But I know one thing, he said. I'm tired of carrying it alone. Caleb felt tears threaten, but kept his voice steady. Then don't carry it alone, he said. Silas nodded, and that nod was something Caleb had thought impossible for most of his life. An ending without a bonfire, the county eased back for a time. Haskett sold some cattle, bargained for breathing room. The ranch did not become a triumph. It simply endured, and in the West, endurance was its own quiet victory. Caleb kept working, not as loud penance, but as commitment. Silas remained a hard man, but less closed. Sometimes they spoke little, sometimes not at all. But Caleb's presence shifted from threat to fact. One morning Mrs. Alden rode out with supplies. She saw Caleb in the yard and watched him a moment, as if comparing the man who returned with the boy who left. You're still here, she said. I am, Caleb answered. She gave a short nod. Then maybe you're learning. When she rode off, Silas came near and said without looking straight at him, if you stay through next winter, I might be able to call you brother without tasting bitterness. Caleb's chest tightened. I don't deserve that, he said. Silas answered, almost irritated. Nobody deserves much out here, he said. You do what you can, and you pay the rest with time. Caleb let out a small breath, no full joy, only relief. Then I'll stay, he said. Silas nodded, and the agreement hung in the air, simple and heavy, like the true things always are. Epilogue. The human cost of the West. The West was not only open sky and horses. It was also stamped paper, debt, winter, and decisions made with an empty stomach. It was labor that stole youth from a man's hands. It was silence that grew inside families until it became a wall. It was necessity forever pressing, pushing men into choices they later called mistakes, so they would not have to call them character. Guilt on the frontier was not elegant. It was an old tool a man carried day after day. Some men used it to build something better. Others used it to dig deeper into their own ruin. Many hid it until it weighed them down from the inside. Caleb Rourke did not find clean, easy forgiveness, because such forgiveness rarely exists where life is hard. What he found was something more real, the chance not to repeat, the chance to choose the difficult road when no one was watching, the chance to work without applause, the chance to accept that some wounds never vanish, but can be kept from ruling the rest of a life. And Silas, the brother who stayed, paid his own price, the loneliness of being the one who held everything up, the fatigue of being two men for too long. His forgiveness did not arrive as a grand gesture. It arrived as tolerance that became trust, as a hand on a shoulder on the right day, as the quiet decision to stop carrying everything alone. That may be what remains when the West Smith fades. Not a land of simple freedom, but a land of consequences. A place where every mile charged a cost, every winter demanded payment, every swallowed word took something from the soul. And still, there were moments small and nearly invisible when a man could choose to return, to stay, and to let his actions say what his mouth struggled to form. I was wrong. I am here. I will not run again. In the West, that was rare. And because it was rare, it mattered.